Today we have Professor Dr. Iqbal Hasnain, who is an expert in glaciology and climate change. When the UAE is hosting COP28, he will be talking on the changes and especially the history of these COP28 and COP conferences that United Nations has been running for a long time. Professor.
Okay. At the outset, I would like to thank the World Muslim Communities Council and give me an opportunity to talk about the COP28, which is scheduled to be held in Dubai in November 2023. So let me begin from the COP21, which was held in 2015 at Paris, in which 198 countries head of the state has attended. It's a very unique conference, and after a long deliberation that all the head of the state has agreed to sign an agreement that the global temperature will be restricted to 1.5 degree till 2030s. So every country will make a measure or do the condition, develop the renewables, that the concentration or the focus on the fossil fuels will be less and the carbon footprint they will reduce. But what has happened that the global temperature has already reached 1.1 degrees Celsius and at certain places 1.2 degrees Celsius. And there is a scientist feel or opinion that before 2025, even by 2024, the global temperature will cross 1.5 degree Celsius threshold. So this means that what the people and the governments were talking, they have not taken the strict measures in reducing the carbon footprints in their own countries. So this indicates that they have not taken the full measures to reduce the carbon footprints, and that really put up the whole process. And since 21 COP, and now we are entering in 28 COP. This indicates that we are already covered 7 years. So during these 7 years, what has happened? Nothing has happened, but the extreme events are increased and the people are affected globally, and everywhere we see the high temperature, flooding, droughts, and all kind of a thing. And climate change, extreme events, it doesn't see which is a rich country, which is a poor country. So recently we saw that in California we have a big flooding. Germany we have a big flooding, Sudan, Pakistan and other countries we have. But the impact of this flooding is different in different countries because their economic condition is different. The recovery time in California was about a month, in Germany was also about a couple of months, and in Pakistan after 6 months nothing has happened. And the people are still refugees and the children out of the school. Similarly, in Sudan, they have an internal crisis, so a lot of migration to the neighboring countries and other problems are facing. So these extreme events are happening with a great frequency these days, and we see the high temperatures in many countries. In California, we saw last year, and again we are seeing here in Spain, we are seeing a lot of high temperature and fire is coming up, and that is also polluting the other countries. In Canada, we saw extreme temperatures and the fire, while the fires, and that is polluted even the New York. Up to it's coming down to that. So this is happening. So this indicates that by the 2030 will be reaching, by the global temperature will touch about 2 degrees Celsius, and that will disaster, and it will cause irreversible changes in the land, ocean and the atmosphere systems. Okay, in one of the clauses in the Paris 2015 agreement was that every country has to achieve net zero to a certain level. So United States has suggested that they will achieve net zero by 2025, and similarly the China suggested that they will reach net zero by 2060 and India by 2070. So what is the net zero? Net zero means that they eliminate entire fossil fuels and put up everything, all energy will be coming from renewables. And that is a big task for developing nations like China and India to put up entire energy coming from the renewable, because they have to ramp up their production of the solar panels and wind energy and all that, which is not possible because solar panels were very expensive. Though China is the largest producers of the solar panel, but is still the largest consumer of the coal-fired power plant, and 85% of their energy comes from the coal. And similarly, Indian energy, about 75% comes from the coal. So how they going to get the net zero by 2060, 2070? So everybody is talking that even by the end of this century, they will not achieve that target. And the world will be more polluted, and it is happening, more warming is happening, more extreme events are happening. So this is a scenario is quite grim, and that will affect the poorer countries, the marginalized countries, which have not contributed so much into the global warming. But many countries like UAE has also put up solar cities and solar panels. They are increased, though they have a fossil fuels in large quantities. So still everybody, whether you have a fossil fuels or not, you have to do something to reduce because we share the one earth. There is no boundaries as we have made man-made boundaries that this is A country, this is B country. For the global warming, the entire earth is same. So whether you come from one country or the other country, you have the shared resources. So in this sharing, we have to see that how best we will achieve. But at the present scenario, it is very difficult for these countries to achieve net zero for the given time. And as I told you earlier, or as explained earlier, that by 2020, every year they have to give a 5-year report. So the next 5-year report is due in 2015. So how they will reduce that much and come to the net zero is just impossible. It is a talking point only for the political purposes. It serves no reality. If you see the reality check, every country is doing polluting more and putting up more carbon footprints. According to the various IPCC reports, the carbon footprint or the greenhouse gases, what we know as the carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, say from 1885 to 1900, or by the end of the century, you can say, it is contributed about 24,000 billion tons total. And out of this 1,000 billion tons came after 1900. And then it is expected that before 2030, another 500 billion tons will be added, the way we are doing our business globally these days. So that will be very big disaster. If you see the lifespan of our time from the 19th century to the 21st century, so in the last phases of 20th century and 21st century, we are contributing more and adding more carbon to the atmosphere and warming our planet more these days. So that is the big scenario. And recently in 2023, World Meteorological Organization, as we know, WMO, has again warned the global nations that these target which was set in the Paris is not achievable. So in the coming the COP28, which is scheduled to be held in the Dubai, so this will be taken up again, and the global nations have to set new targets to achieve 1.5 degree Celsius, which is the threshold, is already passed. So when already something has warmed, so that will not going to help the planet Earth. So that way it is very difficult, and we have to reorient. So another thing which I would like to talk here about the displacement of the people which are affected by these events, or the droughts and the floods and wildfires and sea level rise, for example, and the glacier and ice sheet melting. So these are the consequences by this climate change. So we have saw that a lot of the people are displaced. So United Nations recognizes only those who are migrated because of the religious persecution or the ethnic conflict, and then they provide, as we have seen, that the people migrated from Syria or from other countries as the ethnic conflict was increased. So the United Nations is providing them food and shelter and trying to place them in different countries. But unfortunately, United Nations never don't recognize the people are displaced by the climate events. So that's what we calling them the invisible refugees, and they are within the country. They have a lot of migration. Outside the country there is a lot of migration, but nobody recognizes them, and they are not coming under the United Nations category. I think it is the responsibility of them to take up with the COP28 and organize a side event in Dubai and flag these issues, which has become very important these days. And inshallah, the United Nations, we have to lobby to the United Nations that you please also recognizes these communities which are displaced. And then about the education of the displaced people. Their children are suffering because they are marginalized people. So how they can be educated? So we have to have some plan, whether you use artificial intelligence or use other method of new technologies, and try to give them education, because education, without educating the next generation, you cannot achieve the sustainable development, because it's the basic, the ground, or you can say fundamental, that if you want to achieve the sustainable development, you have to educate the next generation, and the education is the important part or the bottom line for any developmental activities. So that is very important. And in last COP27, which was held in Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt, it was decided to have a fund for these kind of refugees. They have agreed, but the entire profile, how much will be the fund and who will be contributing, whether the World Bank or some other international organization will be funding, will be decided and will be discussed in the COP28 in Dubai. And American G7 met in Japan recently, and they have decided, all the 7 rich countries, that they will provide $100 billion per annum up to 2025 only, not beyond that. And that will be available from the G7 countries, and hope that World Bank and other global funding agencies will come forward for the invisible refugees. I call them invisible refugees because nobody recognizes them, and that is very important. Okay, every community leader are important to educate their own community regarding the consequences of the global warming and the impacts of the extreme events. So if it is an Islamic madrasas, for example, so I don't know, I think they should also include in their contents about the teaching about the climate change, what is the climate change, what is the global warming, how it was became so important that it is causing the extreme events. So these basic knowledge or basic contents has to be developed in the madrasa education, which is typically run all over the world in different countries in different ways. So, but at the moment, as I understand, they talk about the Islamic jurisprudence and hadith and Quran and all those things. But beside that, they also include contents about the climate change and how it is impacting the future generation, because these future generations are very important to know about this details about this whole climate change system. This service is the important part of the Islamic religion, that you serve the other communities, you help the poor people. So in these, say, wherever these extreme events happened, so the people are displaced, the children are affected. So these ulamas or the religious functionaries has to give them reasons and tell them why this has happened and why this climate change and what is your activities, because everybody is contributing to some extent. Some are less and some are more. We are using cars, we are putting up CO2 more, and we are traveling a lot, so we are putting up more CO2. So every activity of human activity is contributing to the carbon footprint. So how they can reduce their carbon footprints? And if they are educated right from the early childhood, so that is important, because you teach everything. You teach them etiquette, you teach them how to respect the elders, you teach so many things. So why don't you include this also in your curriculum, and that will help. Thank you very much. It's a great privilege for me, and I'm thankful to the organization which has invited me and given me this opportunity. Thank you, ma'am.